Hello, happy Saturday. I know I've been really a lax loser with getting this recap for the previous week's Mystery Grape for Thursday 1, which blind tasting clues for Sparkling Shiraz. But I promised you I wanted to get it done because we do have a lot of folks that are going to be taking the D4 sparkling wine, D5 fortified wine coming up here soon, like second week of June. So, spoiler alert, I'll be slipping a little bit more sparkling and fortified into some of the mystery grapes. So we'll see how many people actually watch these videos and it will help them in the next couple weeks' games. We'll see. But I wanted to do Sparkling Shiraz because the clues are really distinctive for it. I also have a nice little bottle of Jacob's Creek Sparkling Shiraz to put my money where my mouth is with that. And just all that frothy colored goodness. Because when you're going into an exam for a sparkling wine exam and you're sitting there, and if you get poured a sparkling red, it does seem like it's a godsend. Because it really takes your world of wine choices and narrows it down to, especially at the diploma level, really 2 items. Sparkling Shiraz or Lambrusco. And if you don't have a lot of experience tasting them, get some bottles if you can. I know it's not always the easiest to find some of these wines, especially when I used to work retail in the U.S. Getting a good bottle of Sparkling Shiraz was a little tough. There's only a few options that were available. But it's worth it to find it. Because once you have the 2 wines side by side, you'll see those clues really distinctive. And when I did this mystery grape the previous week, I neglected to tell you guys it was a sparkling wine in the beginning. I did that on purpose because I wanted you guys to look at the flavor clues and the structure clues without the distraction of bubbles. Because those clues tell you a lot about the climate and the grape it comes from. Because that's going to be those 2 things that when you're doing your argument on your paper about your conclusion of why you think this is a sparkling Shiraz or why you think this is a Lambrusco, those are the clues that you're going to be using to justify your argument. So let's get into those clues. So clue number 1, black plums. Clue 2, blackberry. Clue 3, black cherry. All dark fruit all across the board. We are talking about a warm climate here where the Shiraz that goes into these sparkling wines come from. Could be the Barossa, could be the bigger Southeast Australia region. Warm climate. Like the Jacob's Creek, it's probably from, kind of the yellowtail land. You think around the big rivers area. So it's going to have those darker fruits. But mostly because when they're making these wines, they're giving these Shiraz long hang time to ripen the tannins. Because that's the thing with sparkling reds that you don't think have that issue with the whites. You have Pinot Noir that you can harvest early and you're not getting the color, so you're not worried about the tannins. Sparkling reds, you do worry about tannins, so you want those tannins to be ripe. So that longer hang time on the vine gets us those darker fruits. Now we go over to Lambrusco, Emilia Romagna, and yes, they have to worry about tannins as well, get a little bit more riper, but you think of the nature of the climate there. Yes, it is a Mediterranean climate, so it is warm, but it's not as warm as Australia. It's not as close to the equator as these wine growing areas, so they're not getting as much light intensity. And the nature of the Shiraz grape versus the many different Lambruscos often don't go to the same, dark fruit notes that we see in Shiraz. Lambrusco, more red fruited, more savory flavors versus these dark fruit notes that we're seeing in the Shiraz. Continue with the flavor clues. Clue 4, black licorice, a little bit of a spice component there. Clue 5, dark chocolate, a little bit more of a richness component. That's another thing that you're not likely to see in a Lambrusco. We're likely you're going to get a little bit more of the herbal components with it, and floral components versus a dark chocolatey note. And then clue 6, black pepper, which you can certainly get spicy notes with Lambrusco. Black pepper, kind of going Shiraz. That's one of those things that kind of is a nice little tell for you. It won't always be in every sparkler, so don't use it as a crutch. If you're not getting black pepper in the glass, this Jacob's Creek has a little bit of black pepper, but it's not screaming it. But there's going to be sparkling Shirazes that don't have black pepper. don't use that as a crutch to rule it out just because you're not picking it up. The compound that gives you those pepper notes, Rotentin, around 20-25% of the population doesn't have sensitivity to it. So you're not going to pick up white pepper in your Gruner or black pepper in your Shiraz. It's just natural. So again, don't use that as a crutch. Now let's get to the structure components. Color, you kind of go ruby, like kind of a deep ruby. Certainly could have some purple hues. When I first poured this, the foam was very, very purple. Higher pH on this one. But ultimately, I would call this color more ruby with that. You could get some age examples. Some really the higher quality examples that do a traditional method will age, and so it's going to lose that color on it. Lees kind of sucks out color on it. That's why a lot of producers, when they're making rosé sparklers, like go up to champagne, where they can blend red wine into the white wine, the red wine often gets blended like with the dosage. They kind of sweet spot the color with it because the lees are going to bleach out that color. So it kind of makes it difficult. But definitely looking for that darker color on that. So deep ruby, purple, possibly to medium garnet. So there's a little bit of a range. Medium to pronounced intensity, off dry to medium dry. And this one here on the Clue 6 structure clue, I had quite a few people DM me and be like, is this a typo? Is this legit? Because they're all thinking regular still wines and then red wines, and then you get to a red wine off dry to medium dry. And this is where you need to try this to see. There's residual sugar there. And there certainly are nice quality examples that are true brutes that are dry, but a lot of sparkling Shiraz on the market is going to be at least off dry. Some of them, go over 30 grams per liter residual sugar on that, which that would probably take you more kind of tasting medium dry, even though it's still in the EU sweetness level, like extra dry. And the reason why is, what does sugar do? What is this bringing here? It's helping us balance the tannins. Because tannins, plus the carbonic acid of acidity, that can be a little bit bitter. It can be a little harsh on the mouthfeel. That sugar kind of rounds it out for us in the mouthfeel. And that is why residual sugar is super common with a lot of the sparkling Shirazes that you see in the market. Again, there'll be exceptions, but if you look at the ones that have been featured on past exams, Peter Lehman Black Diamond, that one I think does go up to the 30 grams per liter. That will have some. I couldn't find the residual sugar for this Jacob's Creek. This one hasn't, as far as I can tell, been featured on a past diploma exam. It has been featured on MW exams. The Bleasdale that I featured in the recap post there, that will have a little bit. Again, I couldn't find the exact residual, but there is that off-dry sweetness. So again, very common. Now we go to Lambrusco. A lot of people have, in their minds the Reunite, kind of those 1970s, 1980s bottles that certainly did have residual sugar, and they still do. There's a lot more drier Lambruscos that are out in the market, the Secco, true dry styles. So you could get either in exams, so don't use residual sugar as a crutch. Look at the climate clues, that nature of the fruit, but just keep in mind tannins, sugar, and balance with that, and kind of the nature of that. Speaking of tannins, with this one, medium ripe tannins. So it's not as high tannins as we think about with a traditional Shiraz, but it is definitely going to be riper, softer. Go over to Lambrusco, more fine grain, you could say. Maybe even a little unripe. Kind of just depends on the bottle with that, but definitely not as soft and ripe as you get from the warmer climates. Acidity, medium acidity, very possible. You could get medium plus because carbonic acid, the bubbles itself that's in the glass, that is contributing acidity. That is adding to the mouthfeel. And that makes acid calls a little tough when you're doing a sparkling wine exam. So one of the best things that you can do, give it a little bit of time in the glass to degas a bit. That helps a bit. Also, when it gets warmer, you pick up more aromas. So I never encourage people to jump in and, do their tastings right off the bat. But when you have it in your mouth, work it around in your mouth a little bit. Almost treat it like mouthwash, because that's degassing it in your mouth. And your mouth's going to get a little crazy there for a moment. But after you work it around, kind of let it settle a bit, then you do your spit, then think about the mouth watering. And that gets you a little bit more accurate of a gauge of acidity when you do that degassing a bit. It's a little tough and it feels super weird, so it's definitely one thing to practice. Body, medium to full body. So you think the contribution of the ripe fruit with that. Again, warm climate, ripe fruit. I noticed on this bottle of the Jacob's Creek that they label it bold and generous. They are going for that luscious, ripe fruit that adds weight to the mouthfeel. Plus tannins. Tannins add weight. Plus residual sugar. That adds weight. So you're going to get a little bit more of that mouthfeel. And you have to remember when you're doing these exams, especially if you're doing a WSET diploma exam, when you're judging sweetness, you're judging acidity, you're judging body, you're judging on the scale of all wines, not just sparkling wines. So when you're holding this Sparkling Shiraz in your mouth, try to mentally take away the bubbles in your mind and think about how it feels with other red wines that you would have. Does it feel like a light Pinot Noir? A light-bodied Pinot Noir? Or does it feel like more a riper Barossa Shiraz? You know, where does that mouth feel for it? Try not to let the bubbles distract you as much. Grade it on that scale, that global scale of wine. Alcohol levels, this can vary from medium to high. This particular bottle, the Jacob's Creek, is in the medium, 12.5. Like the Bleasdale that I featured, that's like 13.5. Some vintages can hit 14. And a lot of Sparkling Shirazes can go over 14. This is probably one of the few sparkling wines that you'll see with high alcohol. Most sparkling wines are distinctly in that medium category. You know, you would have some low, like you think your Moscato d'Astis, those sweeter styles, that would take it like under 11%. But most are definitely in that, 11, 11.5, 13.5 range. But with Sparkling Shiraz, because again, longer hang time, I mean, they're picking these grapes pretty much around the same time that they're picking their regular red Shiraz. So it's going to have ripeness. It's going to have sugar there. That's going to get fermented to alcohol. That's going to bump the alcohol up. So you'll have examples like the Peter Lehman Black Queen, which is a traditional method, Sparkling Shiraz. A lot of them are tank method. Like this Jacob's Creek, that's totally a tank method. That one easily goes over 14%. Most vintages, 14.5. I've had a Sparkling Shiraz from Molly Duker. They're Miss Molly, I believe. That was like 15%. It was huge. Because everything from Molly Duker is huge. So when you have a sparkling red, definitely think about the alcohol level. Think about if you're feeling any of that burn. Think about that ripeness, because it could be over 14%, and that would put in the high category. And those are the clues. So thank you very much for joining me and joining Mudgy, the kangaroo there. Definitely like this week's one. I will do the recap for Thursday's Mystery Grape. I promise I won't be such a loser. I will get that one done on Tuesday just to help the folks that are prepping for exams, because as a lot of you caught on, last Thursday's one was a fortified wine. So we'll talk about those clues. Have a good one.